Hello, this is Kyou of Kyou System. I just finished, a few minutes ago, I just finished reading through one of the visual novels that was submitted for the Visual Novel Cup that concluded just in, July of this year. It was actually the second place winner that I finished. I don't know how to pronounce it. I want to say it's Zonebloom. Zonnebloem. Zonebloem. I don't know. But in any case, I just finished it, and I absolutely adored it. It's very clear to see why it won second place. And it's just something that I've been thinking about, or it reminds me of something that I've kind of thought about in the past with this other, for instance, with this other magazine, this magazine that I submitted my work to, Neko Girl magazine. If you haven't read it, you should read it, especially if you're going to be one of my, if you're going to be fans or followers or someone who's going to be following along with my work. I very strongly suspect that you would probably get a lot out of reading Neko Girl magazine. You would probably enjoy it. It's definitely not safe for work, but don't let that stop you. If you can listen to me talk about the one essay and the one where I was talking about the trauma phylactery, and you can definitely read. If you can go through that, then you can definitely read through Neko Girl magazine. Don't worry about that. But nevertheless, when I read through Neko Girl magazine initially, and submitted my own work and all that, I had this idea where I thought about trying to make something like that myself, right? But rather than not just in terms of physically putting not physically, but not just assembling the actual magazine itself, but calling for submissions, things like that. And trying to potentially doing something in that vein myself. Not that I would want to compete with these other magazines, especially because there are so many of them, but just because of how strong an impact everything that was all the content in Neko Girl magazine had on me, that it made me get so excited about it to where I even wanted to submit my own work. I wanted to try and encourage more art like that to be made. I wanted to try and encourage to encourage the creation of these things and to assemble them myself in a way to where others can potentially enjoy in the same way that I do. Since, if we're being honest, Neko Girl magazine is very, very, very slow about updating and releasing new issues. Not enough about that. But my thinking was, okay, the difference between if I were to make a Kyou System magazine, might need to workshop the title a little bit, but nevertheless, assuming hypothetically I were to make a Kyou System magazine, the main thing that I would want to do is I would want to set aside a pool of funds such that I could compensate everyone who submitted to the magazine. And this would be including submissions not just in terms of writing, but if they made collage art or just normal drawings, anything in that vein, any sort of content that I accepted into the magazine and included, that I would want to have, to be able to pay to whoever submitted, and not just to pay them for their time, but also to try and encourage people to submit. And, I would want to pay a premium, right? Because it would be one thing if I charged just market rates. I would still get some submissions and they'd probably be pretty good. I mean, considering that, for instance, Neko Girl magazine had no, you don't get any money for the submissions being accepted. It was just a free kind of thing. But nevertheless, you had all these people making all these powerful art pieces, and then submitting them. So for me, I wanted to try and incentivize it, to try and encourage more people to come out of the woodwork. People who might otherwise not think about it or whatever, even though they might have something genuinely moving to contribute. and I have the financial flexibility to where I could, afford to save up money and have set aside funds for that. So it's still something that I can do, something that I could do, I should say, and might yet do in the future. We'll see how that goes. Right now, I have my hands full and my finances. I don't have that much leeway with my finances right now. So that isn't like going to be happening anytime soon, but it's still an idea that I've had in the back of my head. So all that being said, returning back to what I was talking about with the visual novel cup. Now that, first of all, that is a brilliant idea. I wish I had thought of it, right? The idea of, encouraging people to make, not just to submit writing or something, but to make their own visual novel and to try and tell a coherent story themselves. That I think was, and that was really well done. I think that was a rock solid idea. So I'm supporting, two of the people who were the main ones kind of spearheading it, Sofa and Team CPU. I've been supporting both of them on Patreon for a while. So I got so excited when they revealed that they were doing this idea. I got so excited that I cranked up my contributions to both of them. And I've left it that way because, especially as I've gone through more and more of the submissions for the VN Cup, even the ones that didn't win, there are so many of them are just there are some wildly creative people out there. That's all I can say. If you haven't read any of them, I strongly encourage you to check them out. I'm not even like a third of the way through the list, and already so many of them, even the ones that didn't win, didn't get an honorable mention, so many of them are still so good. I'll put a link in the description if you're curious to check them out. They're all free to download, so there's no barrier to entry there at least. But the point I was going to make originally, talking about the VN Cup, is that they actually offered cash prizes for the the winners. I think it was like $300 for first place, and then $200 and $100 for second and third place, respectively. And again, it's like the results cannot be argued with, right? Just again, the caliber of so much of what was made, even the ones that didn't win. It has underscored the potential that the initial idea that I had for the Kyou system magazine or whatever, that it is viable, that it's not just that there are all these great artists, and that I could very well I guess I might need a bit of a broader reach. I'd have to help get other people to spread the word perhaps, but especially if I offered a cash incentive to encourage artists to make new works or contribute existing ones where they might otherwise be shy or reluctant for one reason or another, to make it worth their while. So with that in mind, it definitely, it definitely is a very, again, I guess money talks, right? Or, well, that's not the right phrase I was looking for, but I think you get the idea in any case. Something I've been thinking about, and I feel like, I don't know, I'm not sure when anything like this would be. This is not me thinking of doing anything like this anytime soon. At the absolute least, I would want to finish reading through all of the VN Cup VNs before I started trying to do anything like that myself, right? And again, I guess if I can financially support the people who are putting up the finances for the cash prizes, I suppose it's kind of indirectly helping to make it possible myself. So definitely we'll keep doing that. But even still, just there's something about and I don't know if maybe this is just me, or maybe I need to read more. Maybe it's been too long since I've read some of this stuff, but I feel like a lot of the visual novels for the VN Cup, a lot of them, I mean, they're amateurish, right? Because they're made by, they're not made by these massive teams of developers. They're not made, they don't have like the hundreds and hundreds of hours of, content, or the super professional graphics and writing and everything like that, with voice acting and all this other stuff. But, well, for one, they only had like a 2-week time period. It was like you had to start on this day and then end 2 weeks later, and that was the window of time you had to work on it. For that matter, they were pretty much all, these small independent efforts. Now, some of them had like maybe teams of like 2 people, but for the most part, a lot of them were just like single person projects. And yet, despite, despite how maybe in one the art isn't like super polished, or maybe in another one the writing is, maybe it's not super crisp or super like grammatically correct, or perfect spelling or something like that. Despite these kind of minor superficialities that are like, oh, this is just some garbage someone threw together. This is just trash. I don't know why they bothered to make it. It's like, no, quite the opposite, actually. I found that with so many of these, I've just been blown away by how genuine and how heartfelt so many of them are. How it's like a lot of them are very raw. Because some of them were, obviously not, well, I guess when you have something where it's just a person writing something and trying to write something from their heart, it's to be expected that it would end up like this. And I'm not just saying, you could argue that, well, they're just trying to crank something out because they want to try and get money for it. But I don't think that's necessarily true. Not in this case. I feel like with at least with all the visual novels that were made for the VN Cup, it feels to me like everyone really poured their heart into it. It was not just something that they kind of like some slipshod ramshackle thing they threw together just to try and to take a shot at it. It's like, no, it's again, like pretty much every single one that I've read so far has left has left an impact on me. Some of them more than others, perhaps. Because some of them, they started earlier, or they had more experience as like an artist or a writer, or they had like 2 people working on it. So, obviously some of the, they're not like an equal distribution in terms of like, well, again, it's like, that's why some of them won and got honorable mentions and some of them didn't. But even taking that kind of like hierarchy or ranking aside, they've all left an impact on me, and they're all just, there's something about it when you have these individually made passion projects. And the way I've described it before, not in the podcast, I don't think, but just talking about it elsewhere, is that it feels like you almost have, when someone pours so much of themselves into, when they make something like this, and they have this passion project that they've done, whether for a competition or just something that they're doing on their own time, it feels almost like you have a fragment of their soul. But, well, maybe that's not the best phrasing, because it's not as though you are, it's like you're taking a piece away from them. It's more something that has almost crystallized out of them, and like they crystallized out of like a solution, and like fell out something that they made that is like distinctly them. And this is still true even for the when you have like a couple of people who work together on something, because I want to say, I know at least in one case it was a couple, like a long time, a romantic couple who made one of the visual novels. It made Zone Bloom, or however you pronounce it, in fact. But nevertheless, in a lot of them, either way, it's like the way I kind of, the best way that I found that I can explain it is, it's almost as though you can get a glimpse of the color of their soul, if that makes any sense. And it's something that you can kind of get a feel for in a lot of other ways. It's a very subtle thing that really only shines through when you have someone who's working on something like a form of creative expression in something or another, and it's just like an individual effort chiefly, and usually and sometimes it shows through in more obvious ways than others, like when you have someone who is drawn for a very long time, they will have like a very distinctive style. Or if they've written for a very long time, they'll have a very distinctive style of prose or of like character interaction or like characters that they will write. And it's subtle. It's not something that you can easily just say, oh yeah, this is clearly, well, I mean, when you look at it, or when you read it, or when you listen to it for music and the like, you can point to it and immediately say, oh yeah, this, you can just tell that this is by such and such. And it's true. Exactly what makes it that way is something that is very difficult to put into words. And that is what I've taken to calling, for want of a better phrasing, the color of their soul, or their style, or so on and so forth. Another example that comes to mind that is also like very, very subtle, but nevertheless as distinct as a fingerprint, is with Vocaloid producers. Even when you have Vocaloid producers who are using the same Vocaloid, the same voice bank, the differences in how the Vocaloid is tuned are very, very unique, very characteristic to each individual producer. And it's not something that you have to listen to a lot of it in order to be able to make out the differences, because it's a very subtle thing. But once you get to where you can pick up on it, you can't unhear it, so to speak. And it's just things like that. And so there's a lot of that I've been getting in, like, especially with these visual novel cup entries, and I have been absolutely loving it. Oh man! In fact, I've been making a point as I've been going through and reading most of these, or all of these, I should say. Well, no, most of these is the correct phrasing, because there are some of them where I guess the person or team, they created the visual novel and they submitted it to the judges, but I guess they didn't end up publishing it anywhere, or at least not that I could find, which is a shame, because I would love to read through all of them. And all the ones that I have read through, where, especially if like ones that are published on like Itch, for instance, where I already have an account, I've been making a point to go through, and I will, in addition to playing through the visual novel and like adding it to my collection that I have on there, I make a point to leave a comment with just usually going out of my way to express what I thought they did especially strongly in their work. And maybe there were a couple cases where it's like, I wish it had been a little longer, or I would have liked to have seen more interaction between these two characters, or something like that. Trying to give not necessarily like critique, but just a little bit of feedback, or my kind of takeaway from the visual novel. And for the most part, I've had nothing but good things to say, and just trying to just express in this sort of way my appreciation for everyone who went to the trouble of making these things. And I hope they appreciate it, at least. I hope they appreciate my appreciation, or my efforts to express such, at least. And I mean, I'm very glad to have been a part of that, to have submitted a visual novel myself, even if it technically wasn't made with RenPy, because I made it using the Permanence engine, because the engine is like an extension of my mind, very much so at this point. But in any case, even if it didn't technically qualify or whatever, I'm so glad to have taken part in it. And it's just something that it's all around has been just very, very nice. And I'm very much looking forward to reading through the other at least a couple dozen that I have left of that, I'm pretty sure. And just taking my time with it, because I don't want to just, I could just rush through them, because most of them aren't that long, because of the time constraints and the fact that, there wasn't, these are like a lot of one-man efforts by people who don't necessarily have a lot of time or resources that they can dedicate to it. But, I don't want to, even if they're short, the last thing I would want to do is just, burn through something really quick when, someone, even if it's not necessarily super polished, they pour their heart into it. That would be a terrible shame. So, bottom line is, I am very glad that the VN Cup occurred. Very glad to have been a part of it. And it has underscored in my mind the idea that I've had of potentially financing something like this myself, whether as an independent venture or, doing it together with other people to have them help spread the word or whatever, or serve as judges or editors, depending on if I wanted to just blatantly steal this idea and say, oh, hey, now there's going to be a Kyou system visual novel cup, with even higher cash prices for even more people, something like that. Or if I wanted to have like a magazine, or if I wanted to kind of like combine forces with, like if I wanted to say, oh yeah, now Necrogirl magazine offers cash, like a cash reward for submissions, or hey, now here's VN Cup round 2, now featuring Kyou system or whatever, or something like that. But in any case, it has just been very, very pleasant, and I've been greatly enjoying just pretty much everything about it. I'm very glad to. Again, I like to think that my supporting the people, the individuals who went out of their way to make, who came up with this idea and made it happen. I like to think that my financial support of them both helped to make this possible, and also helped to, I guess, maybe help them to have the financial breathing room such that they could offer these cash prizes. I don't really know. But in any case, I'm very glad to, I'm definitely going to keep supporting them regardless, because, this is good stuff. This is why I'm supporting them, is because they do stuff like this, right? In addition to their own individual work. So I definitely am very happy to see all of this. And if you, my dear listener, have any interest in visual novels, and you are interested in, I guess especially Yuri visual novels, since that was the the theme for this VN Cup, I very strongly encourage you to take a look at any or all of the submissions, even if you just go and read like the top, like the winners of the cup, or if you wanted to go through and read all of them. I very strongly encourage you to do so. I guess technically if you read through Thera, which if you're listening to this, you probably have, or have at least heard of it, then you've already technically read a VN Cup entry. So in for a penny, in for a pound, I say. But in any case, strongly encourage you to take a look, because I think you will like them, because they're really good, in all their own different ways. Keep an open mind when you go into it to read some of them. Like, don't immediately just discount it if you read one and you like the first couple of CGs are really basic or something like that, and or look really messy, or the writing is, if it feels like, it's like, don't let the lack of a professionalism, in as much as that's relevant, deter you. A lot of these VNs are, again, or pretty much all of them, are just absolute gems, just a delight to read. So I very strongly encourage you to take a look and keep an open mind. And in any case, I very much appreciate you keeping me company through all of this, and I hope you take care until next time.